Hello, my name is Jared Ludlow, Publications Director at the BYU Religious Study Center, your weekly resource for gospel scholarship. And today I'm joined by Becca Black, one of our video editing interns here at the RSC, and we'll be talking about some possible resources that can accompany your Come Follow Me reading for February 12th through 18th, 2 Nephi 3 through 5. The first is called Millions Shall Know Brother Joseph Again, Joseph Smith's Place Among the Prophets. It's by Scott Esplin, the current Dean of Religious Education at BYU, and comes from a volume the RSC published called Joseph Smith and the Doctrinal Restoration. And while it focuses a lot on Joseph Smith in church history, it ties into the Come Follow Me reading because of the prophecies about Joseph in 2 Nephi 3. So Brother Esplin starts by talking about how throughout Joseph Smith's lifetime there are varied responses and opinions of Joseph Smith. In fact, one non-member said, "If the reader does not know just what to make of Joseph Smith, I cannot help him out of the difficulty. I myself stand helpless before the puzzle." So they, sometimes admired his great things and qualities, but also he had his detractors, right? Another point he makes is, as we mentioned, that Father Lehi used an account of Joseph from Egypt in one of his prophecies while teaching his own son Joseph of his namesake's future mission. And so within that chapter, 2 Nephi 3, we have really four different Josephs talked about, starting with Joseph of Egypt, then Lehi's son Joseph, Joseph Smith, and Joseph Smith Sr. is also alluded to. And another point he makes is the challenge of understanding the full breadth and grandeur of Joseph Smith's mission during his day and then how he's understood by his successors. There's just so much to what he did and accomplished. So Becca, what stood out to you from this article?
Yeah, specifically kind of relating to your last point, I really thought it was interesting that the author mentioned that Joseph didn't just translate the Book of Mormon. As you said, he also added a lot of depth to certain gospel subjects, such as God's eternal plan and the importance of the family within the church doctrine. And then, as you mentioned, also he really kind of helped pave the way for his successors to kind of step up to the mantle and continue to add on to that. So I thought that was really cool.
Good. Yeah, there's a lot to him as a prophet. So here's some of Scott Esplin's conclusion. With help from his prophetic peers and insights from others who knew him, we begin to see the mission of the obscure New York farm boy. Someday we may fully understand one of Joseph's final comments about himself. At the conclusion of his April 1844 King Follett discourse, he told those assembled in Nauvoo, "You don't know me. You never knew my heart. No man knows my history. I cannot tell it. I shall never undertake it. I don't blame anyone for not believing my history. If I had not experienced what I have, I would not have believed it myself. When I am called by the trump of the archangel and weighed in the balance, you will all know me then." And someday millions really shall know him again, as Brother Esplin concludes. The next article is called The Lamanites, A More Accurate Image. It's by Richard Cowan, a retired religion faculty member from BYU. It comes from the book published by the RSC, The Book of Mormon, Helaman through 3 Nephi 8, According to Thy Word. And a few points that stood out to me. The Book of Mormon shows that at times the Lamanites were the more righteous people and predicts that their latter-day descendants have a glorious destiny. And so, even though it starts off with kind of a negative view of the Lamanites after Lehi's death between Nephi and his brothers, eventually we see different conversion stories, first with the sons of Mosiah and then with Helaman's sons Nephi and Lehi, where in the end most of the Lamanites had become converted, insomuch, as the Book of Mormon points out, that their righteousness did exceed that of the Nephites. What did you learn from this article?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that this article kind of took us through the whole history per se of, the Lamanites, and it was kind of interesting to see, I guess, for lack of a better term, the ebbs and flows of the way in which the Lamanites would kind of carry themselves and also the roles that they fulfilled. So how they would sometimes have more power than the Nephites, and then they would be more wicked than the Nephites. But then, especially in times of, like, for example, it mentioned in the article, in the time of Kishkumen or Gadianton, the roles were flipped. And so the Nephites were actually considered the more, like, wicked amongst them. So I just thought it was really interesting to see that like it wasn't a linear path; it just kind of went all over the place.
Great. Yeah, so there's just one story of the Lamanites. It's a lot of different parts to it. So here's part of Brother Cowan's conclusion. Contrary to the opinion of those who may have read the Book of Mormon only superficially, or who have not read it at all and formed opinions based on hearsay, it does not portray a consistently negative image of the Lamanites. It does suggest a glorious future for this choice people. The Lamanites truly are a people of destiny. When church members more accurately appreciate the image and more fully understand the teachings of the Book of Mormon concerning the Lamanites, they should not feel the least hesitancy or embarrassment about sharing this book and its message with the descendants of these people. On the contrary, they should be eager to fulfill their responsibility to do so. Now, the third resource is actually a video roundtable discussion done a few years ago by 4 ancient scripture faculty members, one of whom has retired since then, Andrew Skinner. The others are Avram Shannon, Jan Martin, and Eric Huntsman. And in this roughly half-hour video discussion, they talk about the introduction to the Atonement in the small plates of Nephi. So they look a lot at how the Atonement is portrayed in different parts of 1st and particularly 2nd Nephi.